Hi everyone and welcome to this presentation, Reading for University 1. My name is Laura Ficorilli and I'm one of the Language and Learning Advisors based in the library here at Charles Darwin University. Charles Darwin University acknowledges all First Nations people across the lands on which we live and work, and we pay our respects to elders, both past and present. I would like to start with a quote which exemplifies the way we should approach books and texts in general, with an open mind, a curious mind, and most of all, a critical mind. This is particularly important in a university context where you are called to interpret and evaluate texts rather than only comprehend them to gather information. So, books are not made to be believed, but to be subjected to inquiry. When we consider a book, we mustn't ask ourselves what it says, but what it means. What are we going to cover in this workshop? What does reading for university mean? What are the common challenges for students? Reading as a process and what it involves. Reading actively and critically. Purpose, prediction, and motivation. Reading skills and strategies. Let's start with what is reading. Well, a simplified definition of reading would be reading is the ability to draw meaning from the printed page and interpret this information appropriately. Is this definition sufficient? What other factors we will take in consideration to help us understand what abilities one requires to read? Let's have a look at what is one of the first things you have to read or browse at least as you start uni. You would have to read through your unit's outlines and content. In fact, you may already have an idea about your areas of studies, but reading the outline or content of the specific units you're taking is crucial for you to understand the scope and direction of the reading material and its focus. When you click on the reading list, some challenges may become clear to you quite quickly. So, this is a random list for a unit, and it's organized in weekly readings. How do you feel when you see the amount of material you are required to read? Do you think of any challenges you may face? What do the students say about reading challenges? It's hard to find the main points and concepts, especially in consideration of the load of reading to do. There is so much to read. I lose concentration after a few minutes because I start from the beginning and tend to read everything. Well, that is rarely going to work, and you may run out of time if you do that. So, how do you manage your time when reading? Sometimes the vocabulary is not easy to understand as you're just starting to familiarize with your discipline. Let's have a look at some of the important factors impacting on individuals' reading abilities. There are quite a few factors at play if we consider reading as a process with different stages and outcomes. Each reader has individual reading skills and a unique combination of both skills and strategies which they may use differently in different circumstances. One's background, experience, and knowledge of the world comes to play when students are familiar with context and topics. In this case, they can predict what a text is about and make a better interpretation of it. Knowledge of grammar and vocabulary and the use we make of it on a day-to-day basis is a factor. If we are used to reading, we would generally have a wider vocabulary and a better mastery of the language as a whole. Purpose, motivation, and interest we have in reading a text greatly influences the outcome of our reading. Finally, our familiarity with particular types of texts also impacts on our overall ability to read. Now, let's have a look at the strategies we may apply to each challenge. One of the challenges we mentioned before was there is so much to read. A strategy to overcome this is to know your purpose for reading. This has to do most likely with your assignment, the assignment question, and the task at hand. So, Identifying the purpose means asking oneself questions such as, what's the question I have to answer to write my assignment? What information do I need to answer this question? Have I read enough to be able to answer it? If you're not sure how to answer these questions, reread the task description of your assignment and reread the question. This will help you delimit the scope of your reading and keep in mind the purpose for which you are reading. Tip: make connections between the lectures and the assignment questions early on. This will help you find the focus areas of your reading material. Let's try to identify which of the following purposes for reading are relevant at university. Pause the video for a minute and think. To obtain figures of factual information, to understand ideas or theories, to understand the reasoning behind an argument, to discover an author's viewpoint, to support one's claim. Knowing your purpose for reading is also important in relation to the type of text you will have to read. Take a few minutes and look at the table below. Pause the video if you like. Try to identify the academic and non-academic texts on the left-hand side of this table. The answers are in the next slide. Once you have finished with this activity, try to match the definitions on the right with the nouns on the left. The answers are in the next slide. Take a minute to see if you answered correctly. Let's consider another challenge. It's hard to find the main points and concepts out of all the reading you have to do. The strategies here are to familiarize with the topic. Be curious about it. Read and research about it as much as you can. Also, read carefully your semester's unit outline. Make the most of the lectures. Take notes and ask questions. Revisit your notes at a later stage. Highlight the main issues and contextualize them. What do they relate to? How and where can I find more information? Join study groups or pass the peer assistant study session, where you can unpack what you have read or even read with a group of peers. Tip: use mind maps to make the connections among ideas and concepts. Take notes on questions to ask. Ask early on, ask frequently. Another common challenge is the vocabulary. Sometimes it's difficult to understand it. The strategy here is to familiarize with the unit content as much as possible by browsing the material prior to lectures to tune in with recurring keywords and concepts. Identify keywords recurring in lectures and texts. Don't learn their definitions only, contextualize them. Look for a glossary. This may be somewhere on your online material or in the appendices of your textbook. If it's not there, build a glossary yourself. Tip: don't stop and look up every word you don't know in a dictionary. Try to guess non-familiar words through the context. Learn how to make inferences. It's a skill. We make inferences all the time based on what we already know and can predict, which can make us fill up the blank, so to speak. Let's look at this example of how we can make use of the linguistic context. I felt so outraged that my face and neck became red and I had to stop myself from punching him. What if you did not know the word outraged? Would you still understand this sentence? What is an alternative word? Next is the challenge of losing concentration as you try to read everything, line by line. Here, the recommendation is to familiarize with the structure of academic texts. This will help you predict the content and organization of the text itself and will help you understand the sections that have the most relevance to your purpose, the better the predictions, the faster the processing of reading for your intended purpose. The more selective the readings, the higher the attention. Tip: in the case of journal articles, read the title, have a quick read through the abstract, look for keywords, and identify the claims and arguments the author is making in the conclusion or discussion section. Let's have a look at how we make inferences from a text structure. We'll have a look at the journal in the next slide, but let's look at the images now. We've got a pizza and a cancer, and some sort of connection between the two. Before reading the whole article, we can ask ourselves the following questions. What is the article about? Look at the title. What relationship does this research try to establish? Let's read the abstract. What are the key words? Where do you look for what this research concludes? And this is a structure of a typical journal article. So we have the title at the top. We have the authors below the title. We have the abstract underneath, which summarizes the content of the research. We have the introduction, which gives an outline of the research and reports on the existing literature on the topic in question. Then we have the methodology, the methods used to collect data and to analyze them. Finally, the results where the outcomes of the research are reported, and the discussion, where they are discussed with the significance of the research and its implication. The references come last. The last challenge we mentioned earlier was running out of time and panicking. The recommended strategies here is to be organized, be focused, and manage your time. Check the reading lists and the actual readings required in the unit outline. Check your overall workload. Decide how to allocate reading time. Be clinical. Be selective. How many journal articles are there to read? How long will it take? What chapters of the textbook are the relevant ones for the assignment? Let's recap the strategies we looked at. Strategy 1. Know your goal. Know your purpose for reading. Strategy 2. Familiarize yourself with your topic. Be curious. Strategy 3. Identify keywords and concepts. Strategy 4. Make use of text structure. Strategy 5. Get organized. Stay focused. Be selective. Make use of digital tools such as notes, bookmarks, files, and reading lists. In sum, understanding academic texts beyond discipline-specific vocabulary is a challenge. Academic texts, and especially journal articles, are written in a formal style. Sentences tend to be complex as they have to explain research processes, support arguments and claims, etc. Read actively, focus on the purpose. Don't stop the flow of your reading for each word you do not know or you are unsure of, unless it's absolutely necessary. Try to infer, make a guess based on the context of what you're reading. In most cases, your guess would be right, and you'll become better and better at this. And last, practice. And remember, if you get stuck, pay us a visit. Go to the CDU library page and click on Assessment Help. Follow the prompts and book an appointment with a language and learning advisor. Thanks for watching this video.